All members of committee are present this evening with the exception of Councillor Medeiros and Councillor Palashi. They may be joining us later. If I could remind everybody to please put your cell phones on an inaudible mode so as not to disturb the meeting here this evening. Anybody with fancy ringtones especially need to put them on mute. Welcome to our fancy council chambers. They're not as fancy as the ones over in the main part of City Hall, but I can guarantee you that the seats are more comfortable here than what they currently are over there. There's a couple of changes to the agenda this evening. They're printed before you. On item 4.3, there are two replacement pages as indicated, pages 4.3-2 and 4.3-18. And on item 7.2, there is a replacement page 7.2-107, Appendix 13. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Councillor Gibson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have some correspondence from Michael Gagnon I'd like to add, and I'm assuming it would be 13.1.
That's correct.
And I assume it's going to be handed out?
Yeah,
Once
once
we
we approve the agenda,
Okay.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you.
And just before I call for approval of the agenda, there was a request to delegate from Mr. Michael Gagnon this evening. Mr. Gagnon has agreed not to delegate conditional upon Commissioner Elliott confirming that a report on the matter that he wanted to delegate on will be forthcoming.
Through the chair, I can confirm that staff are working on a report to present to council next week.
For June the
that matter.
13th?
That is correct.
Great, thank you. In that case, we don't need to add the delegation this evening. So, someone like to move approval of the agenda? Councillor Willens, all those in favor? That's carried. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Under consent agenda, is anybody in attendance this evening? We have potential delegations under 5.1 related to item 7.1 on the agenda, which is a report from R. Campbell, the Supervisor of Zoning. It's a site-specific amendment to the sign bylaw 399-2002 as amended, 8205 to 8405 Financial Drive, Caniff Properties Limited, Lionhead Marketplace. Is anybody in attendance this evening that would wish to delegate on that item? I don't see any hands in the air. If nobody's here, would someone like to move 7.1 into consent? Councillor Palashi? And so the three items in consent will be 8.1, 8.2, and 7.1. Someone like to move consent? Councillor Fortini, all those in favor? That's kind of carried. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite our Commissioner Rob Elliott to make some introductions because there'll be some new faces, perhaps making delegations on the statutory public meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take a moment to introduce two new staff that are joining us for their first planning committee here at the city. First is Bindu Shah, who's our new development planner. And Bindu is coming to us from Fort McMurray, but had done some time with our urban design team here in the past, so brought her back on board. And secondly, I'd like to introduce Bob Bierke, who's our new Director of Planning Policy, and has just joined us in the last couple of weeks as well, from the city of Halifax.
Do they have their speeches ready? Thank you. Members of the public who are here this evening, we've now moved to the statutory public meeting reports. This is a public meeting of the Planning and Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at this public meeting are the result of applications made under the Planning Act. These are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. Tonight, we do have one city-initiated proposal on the agenda. It is item 4.1 regarding a city-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to permit temporary parking of seasonal recreational equipment. The intent of this public meeting is to hear submissions from the applicant and the public regarding these proposals. Members of the committee may ask questions of clarification only, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. The city also has posted to its website at www.brampton.ca supporting information and documentation for all of these current development applications for public review and reference. We'll now proceed to consider the items on this evening's public statutory meeting agenda. The first item is item 4.1. As I mentioned, it's the city-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to permit temporary parking of seasonal recreational equipment, and the applicant is the city of Brampton. It affects right across the entire city. All wards are affected. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from city staff regarding this proposal this evening? If you're interested in seeing a presentation, could you just put your hand up in the air for me? Okay, that's great. And what I'll do is I'll go back to that item after I go through the other three statutory public meetings this evening. The next item, Mr. Clerk, I now turn, we have a new process where I have to follow a script, which is not in my DNA usually. Now I'll move to item 4.2. Okay. So this is an application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit a multi-building commercial development. The applicant is KLM Planning Partners, Inc. on behalf of Golden Gate Mississauga Road Plaza in Ward 5, and it's located at 9567 and 9581 Mississauga Road, the northeast corner of Mississauga Road and Williams Parkway. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and presentation from city staff? I beg your pardon? You have a letter of submission? Okay, I'll come back to that item on the agenda. Is anybody else here? Okay, seeing none, we'll come back to that item. The next item is 4.3. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the development of approximately 87 dwelling units in the form of a 6-story apartment building as part of the proposed affordable rental housing project. KLM Planning Partners, Inc. on behalf of Brampton Bramalea Christian Fellowship Church Incorporated, 11651 Bramalea Road in Ward 9. Is anybody here this evening who wishes to see a presentation on behalf of the applicant or the city? I'll ask one more time. Does anybody wish to see a presentation? Let the record show that no one in attendance this evening at this statutory public meeting has requested an applicant's submission. Does the applicant wish to make a submission to the committee on this proposal? No? Okay, let the record show that the applicant has declined the opportunity to make a submission to the committee on this matter. Do any members of this committee have questions of city staff for clarification only regarding this proposal? Seeing none, then I'll accept a motion by Councillor, the area councillors are, Councillor Sprovieri? I'll accept a motion from Councillor Sprovieri to approve the staff report. All those in favor? That's carried. The final application is 4.4. It is an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit 172 townhouse dwelling units, NYX Capital Corp., 12 Henderson Avenue in Ward 3. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to see a presentation from the applicant and the city on this application? Lots of hands in the air. Okay, great. We'll come back to that item. For now, we'll move to back to item 4.1. And this is, this evening, we have a proposal submission by the City of Brampton, Bindu Shah, Development Planner. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you'd like to do the presentation. Welcome, Bindu.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Bindu Shah, and I'm the development planner responsible for managing the review of the city-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to permit temporary parking of seasonal recreational equipment. Today, I will be giving you an overview of the policy context, followed by the next steps in the process moving forward. So the location for this is citywide on all residential lots with ground-related housing that is single-detached and semi-detached. The council direction was that a city-initiated amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit these trailers carrying recreational vehicles, for example, watercraft, snowmobiles, all-terrain vehicles, etc., on these lots be brought forward. The current zoning bylaw, 270/2004, right now does not permit these type of trailers to be parked in the front or exterior side yards of residential lots. It only permits them to be parked in the rear or interior side yards. This proposed amendment will allow the limited parking of trailers in driveways. This will provide some flexibility to owners for interim parking, example when they are leaving or returning from trips or for maintenance purposes. The proposal includes allowing one utility trailer carrying personal motorized or non-motorized watercraft, all-terrain vehicles, or snowmobiles to be parked on a driveway in the front or exterior side yard, subject to a few requirements and restrictions, like it shall not occupy any parking space required under the zoning bylaw, shall not exceed 7 meters in total length, shall not exceed 3 meters in total height, including the trailer and the boat or the other utility equipment on top, and shall only be parked for a period not exceeding 72 hours per calendar month. Through the processing of the amendment, some issues that will be reviewed include compatibility with the City of Brampton's objectives for community design in residential areas, and appropriate mechanism for monitoring this compliance of this bylaw. The next steps and the conclusion include I will continue to process the amendment and will be considering all comments received from the public and technical experts. At a future time, I will be preparing a recommendation report for the consideration of the Planning and Development Committee and Council. The report will include a discussion on any comments or questions that are received from the public. All members of the public that provide their contact information for this amendment will be advised when the future recommendation report will be presented. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now invite any members of the public who wish to offer comments on this to come forward. And if I could ask you to sign in, is Risha? Okay. If I could ask you to sign in, and when you come forward, if you could state your name for the public record, and you'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation this evening.
Won't be that long.
If anybody else wishes to speak after this gentleman, maybe you can sign in while he's speaking to keep things moving along. Good evening. If you
Good evening.
State your name, please.
My name is Richard Wright from Brampton, Ontario. I did respond to Ms. Bindu's thing in the paper as a boat owner and being a member of, moved to Brampton in 1989. Unbeknownst to me, the bylaw was changed in 2004. So I certainly look forward to this change in the proposed bylaw. I would, however, strongly urge them to readdress the 72-hour period. My boat, until I was told last year that I was in contravention of the bylaw, had always been parked on my driveway far enough away from the sidewalk to have any hindrance, properly blocked, properly secured, and in no way had any bearing on the visual aspect of the streetscape from a pedestrian standpoint or from a vehicle standpoint, driver standpoint. The current law the current bylaw as I understand it right now allows me to park apply for a parking consideration for up to 14 days a year on the street. Somewhat self-defeating because Brampton already has very congested streets in my neighborhood as well. And I just don't understand the rationale. The other rationale I do not understand is the current bylaw as it reads right now is if I didn't have a boat or a snowmobile or an all-terrain vehicle, but I had a pop-up tent trailer, I can legally park that in my driveway. That's a recreational vehicle. A snowmobile is a recreational vehicle. A boat is a recreational vehicle. So I would seriously ask them to reconsider the timeline. I really do appreciate the fact that they are moving forward with this, get those vehicles off the road, and get them into people's safe places where they are secured, and we just move forward from there. That's my rant for the night. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wright, could you state your address for the public record?
95 Cherry Tree Drive.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome. If you could state your name and address.
My name is Stephen Yurchek. Address is 3 Arundel Crescent in Brampton. Good
Okay.
evening, everybody. As a new-found member of the Brampton community, I've only been here for about 5 years. Always been an outdoor person, always been a recreational user. I've always been, this is the way I was taught. We were fishermen, we were hunters, we've done it all our lives. To have a bylaw officer come to me and pass 10 other boats saying that we're not in compliance with the 72-hour rule, I thought it was a little bit obscene. For 72 hours, you can't fix a boat if it's not doing too well. My reasoning for coming tonight was the length and height were perfect. It's the 72-hour rule per calendar year is absolutely out of, I don't know where 72 hours comes from. Maybe for the people that don't know how to use a recreational vehicle or don't use them. They require about 72 hours a year of maintenance. I had a brief conversation with Bindu before coming in here, and I was never opposed to making it a seasonal permit, paying for the actual years or using the summer months for a nominal fee and paying for it there rather than having to store it north of Erin, coming back, storing it again. And we all know after a long weekend, coming back Sunday night, kids don't want to go and drop a boat off at Northern Erin and coming back home at 11 o'clock at night. They just can't. So that was my little rant for tonight.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Is anybody else? I'm sorry.
So, Madam Chair, just one point of clarification, just so that everyone within the audience for this item tonight is aware, the draft bylaw that has been put forward by staff for consideration and discussion tonight references 72 hours per calendar month, not per year.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome. If you could state your name and address, please.
Yep. Good evening, my name is Kirk Foster. Our address is 20 Golfview Drive, Brampton. As a resident of Brampton for the last 17 years, I've had a small utility trailer that I use periodically for a variety of things, taking loads of garbage to the dump, moving dirt bikes, which is a recreational vehicle that I spend time with my son using, also moving things for neighbors and people that don't have a truck or a trailer, helping people out in the community. My trailer gets used very frequently, and to have it stored in my side yard behind gates or in the backyard, which I'm fortunate I can, but it's just the time and effort of putting it there and getting an extra body to help me push it up there because I have a bit of a slope, I think is not, doesn't make sense to me anyways. I got a warning last year about a complaint of my utility trailer. It's not like it's a large landscaping trailer, it's just a small 5x8 trailer that I use. It's in good shape. I put tire chocks under the tires so it can't roll down the driveway, and we have no sidewalk on our street. It's on my paved driveway, and we have room for 4 vehicles. And I don't agree with a 72. I know the gentleman just said it's 72 hours per month, but with me using it 2-3 times a week and having to wheel it behind my gate and pulling it out and wasting time doing that, I don't agree with that. I think we should propose a 4 or 5 month seasonal allowance for boats, Sea-Doos, 4-wheelers, dirt bikes, utility trailers to a certain reasonable size, not a massive landscaping one that a commercial business is using. This is for personal use. That we should have a seasonal time allotment that we're allowed to use them and keep them on our driveways. We're trying to promote active outside physical activity these days, and I know a lot of people don't agree, but if you've ever driven dirt bikes or other motorized vehicles, it is an actual workout, and you can do the research, but it's out there. So I just want to voice my opinion and say that I'd also like added to the proposed bylaw provision that a utility trailer, right now it's just saying a personalized a non-motorized watercraft with one utility trailer. I just want to make sure that a utility trailer with nothing in it can stay on the driveway for at least, like, say, May till October when it's used fairly regularly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirk. Hello and welcome.
Hello, good evening. And my name is David Van Houten, and I live at 12 North Humberland Place in Brampton, my hometown, which I grew up in, I might add, and which I love dearly. I passionately advocate for everything Brampton, and this no less. Also, I own a personal watercraft and would like to have the access to it on my driveway. I have a fairly good-sized driveway and have my watercraft parked at the very top over by my garage. And to have that 72-hour window is not a great time-wise for an item that we use regularly in the summertime. So to park it in the driveway would make it accessible. And Brampton's all about fun and having recreation, and this is part of my recreation also. I'd like to have some access to my recreational unit there. So again, thanks very much.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else?
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
My name is Adam Koopsta. I live at 20 Oak Gardens Court in Brampton. I'd like to thank council for having this meeting today and having this hearing. I was, just a full disclosure, I was the original person that brought this issue to council for consideration. I see that the present bylaw draft considers some of the provisions in adjacent communities, namely City of Mississauga. One of the concerns for me is the overall length of the trailer. We have purchased a boat for our recreational enjoyment whose utility and whose use is really quite confined to essentially Lake Ontario, where we have contracted a seasonal slip in a marina. Our original use case was to transit with the vessel to other lakes, and 3 years ago when we bought it, or 2 years ago when we bought it, we brought it to the driveway for the initial cleaning because it was a second-hand purchase, and to perform initial maintenance. The boat wasn't on the driveway for more than a week, and I received enforcement action by the city's bylaw enforcement. The issue I have with the overall length is the 7 meter. City of Mississauga, for instance, does not include things like the trailer tongue, which is the thing sticking out of the trailer that connects to the truck, or the towing vehicle. And in this case, my boat, its entire overall length is 10 meters. And my boat fully is able to fit on my driveway. I have a very long driveway. I can comfortably fit about 4.5 vehicles on it. I think that in consideration with some of the other fellow boaters and outdoor folk here, I think that, you know, for vessels accommodating the prescribed length, perhaps a longer time frame may be considered. But for larger vessels such as mine, which accommodates a full 10 meters, I'm okay with the 72-hour period, because in my case, it's about taking the boat out of Lake Ontario and taking it somewhere else and enjoying it with my family. I can't do that today. I don't have the facility to store it for transit purposes. So you take the thing out of the water on Friday, Saturday morning, you go somewhere. It just creates way too much coordination and confusion when you're rushing to the marina at 5 o'clock in the morning to pull the boat out, collect the kids. It's just way too much dynamic. So it would be great if we could consider something, a period of, like, I'm fine with the 72 hours per month, because it basically addresses my use case. I don't want to store the boat on the driveway. I just want a spot that I already pay for with my tax dollars. I paid for it with my hard-earned money, interest payments, etc. I just want to be able to use it for what I want to use it for. And just in full disclosure, you know, when we did, you know, save our hard-earned money to buy a boat, to be honest with you, City of Brampton was the last person on my list to call and ask for permission. Can I buy one and use it the way I intend to use it with my family? We bought it primarily because there was a stressful time in our family dynamics, and the boat has really connected us together as a family. Just quite frankly, you can't go anywhere else but be confined on that one boat on the lake. So I would request that the city consider an increase of the 7 meters to 10 meters, and that would make me a happy boater.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers this evening? Seeing none, do any members of council have questions of city staff of clarification only? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, for clarification purposes. Where did the 3 days come up with? How did that get decided that 3 days a month was an appropriate number?
Through you, Madam Chair, so through to Councillor Bowman. I believe, Councillor, that the 3-day timeline was just thought generally to be a reasonable period to allow somebody to bring the boat onto their property, perform some seasonal maintenance, if not a boat, but really over the winter months or other seasons. Other vehicles to, again, be brought to their residents to perform some seasonal maintenance to it as well. There was some benchmarking done by staff with other GTA municipalities. There may have been reference to 3 days there or something comparable, but this is what staff really thought, really as a first start, as far as a reasonable period for discussion tonight.
Okay, and Alan, if you can just let me know, is that comparable to Mississauga or Halton or surrounding areas?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I believe generally it is. I don't have the statistics or provisions as it relates to the other municipalities here with me tonight to double check, but I think generally staff has found that really what we're proposing here is comparable in those ways.
Bindu, do you have
Yes,
anything?
no, just wanted to add, yeah, City of Mississauga does have 72 hours per month, and that's what we saw, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Medeiros.
Through the chair. And yeah, and to follow up with Councillor Bowman, be it the 72 hours, looking at the seasonal, there was someone had mentioned the seasonal, be it a winter seasonal or a summer seasonal. I'm just finding that the 3 days myself, if we were close to water, I'd understand the 72 hours, but we're quite, you know, it's a different situation than Mississauga. Have we explored looking at seasonal permits, and also from an opportunity, there seemed to be some willingness to pay a permit if it was allowed to. Have we looked at that?
So through you, Madam Chair, I can't speak to the specifics about potential licensing and permitting. I know that staff has had some contemplation towards proceeding in that way. I know that there's some difficulty that would be associated with a process involving licensing and permitting, in that it's additional resources that staff would have to put to those matters. I think the general thought was that if we were to find a reasonable way forward in the, stemming from really what we've put forward tonight for discussion purposes as a proposal, that might be an efficient, appropriate way forward without involving significant resources from staff towards permitting and licensing as well.
So just through the chair, appreciating that there might be resource implications, we'd be able to find a recoup if there was some form of permit expense, or it would be able to be revenue neutral. And I guess, do we have a sense, through the chair, how many people this would affect in the city? Do we have a rough estimate of how many commercial, or how many folks have either these type of requirements, be it for boats, et cetera?
Through Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Just in response to Councillor Medeiros, a lot of our numbers about boats and trailers would then come to us from our enforcement counterparts. Obviously, the ones that we're enforcing are the ones we know about. I would say that on average, we probably have about 300 or 400 complaints and enforcement actions for vehicles, recreational vehicles, and that's just for the boats on trailers. And then there are the other, if you're going to expand the exemption as requested by one member of the public tonight, to include simply utility trailers that are parked on driveways, perhaps even to other trailers, camper trailers that might be parked on driveways, other than the small compactable ones. We could be looking at upwards of, thousands, tens of thousands. Many people have utility trailers and seasonal vehicles, whether they park them on their driveway every night all year long, or seasonally even. We would only know that through our enforcement action.
And just through the chair, I assume, I guess, when we go back and we take all the comments, but we'll look at some of the options. Because I do say I'm curious about the seasonal aspect. Even if we charged a fee, I just find that the whole production of putting a trailer on your driveway, especially with our summers being so short, or during the seasonal, and having to go to another, because even find storage space, I would imagine with the population demographic, with the population boom that we have here in Brampton, even to find storage space must not be an easy task. And I assume a lot of these folks are traveling hours outside of the municipality to even store what they have to store. So I'm just finding, and I don't have a boat, I've never boated, so I don't know, but I do empathize with some of these issues that have been raised. Hopefully we look at those options. Thank you.
Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a quick question. I'm looking, it says 7 meters in length, but 3 meters. I don't own a trailer, but 3 meters is not really that height if you look at the length. Did we actually look at trailers and see? And height-wise, that's only about 10 feet.
We did, certainly. The height-wise, it's 10 feet, so that would be the average size of what you would expect of an accessory structure. So the maximum height for an accessory building in your backyard is 10 feet. Maximum height for an oversized motor vehicle, before it becomes oversized, is only 2.6 meters. So we took into consideration the height of the trailer plus the height of the vehicle on top of that trailer and extended it to 3 meters. Certainly the 7 meters is consistent again with our oversized motor vehicle. It's also relatively consistent with the length of an average driveway, which would only be 6 meters from the garage to the front lot line. So a lot of those factors were considered certainly when recommending those dimensions to you.
And I understand. I'm talking about camping trailers. I'm not talking about putting a boat or something on top, but the regular camping trailer, I think, and it's under 7 meters, I think the height is higher than 3 meters.
I would agree, and that's why this proposed amendment would not apply to camping trailers. It only applies to seasonal recreational equipment that is sitting on a trailer. So things like boats, things like Sea-Doos, things like snowmobiles. It would not apply to a camper trailer that would be towed behind a vehicle.
So a pop-up trailer?
The pop-up ones that are in the collapsed position can remain and are exempt up to a maximum length of only 5 meters. And that's currently permitted in the bylaw as it reads today.
And if someone had, last question through the chair, someone had room to go past the house, they could actually put it in the backyard on the side? if they had room?
Correct. One recreational vehicle on a trailer is permitted in the side or in the rear yard.
And it has to pass the front of the house?
Yes,
or-
it does. No part of it can extend into the front yard.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Miles?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Could I just get clarification on that, Catherine? This is in the new bylaw that that the trailer would have to be?
This is we're in the statutory public meeting
Yes.
portion, so.
So the report is suggesting that it would have to be to the side of the house.
No, through you, Madam Chair, in response to Councillor Miles, the bylaw as it currently reads, so the bylaw that's in force today would only permit a boat on trailer provided that it's in the rear yard or in the side yard, so behind the front wall of the dwelling. The proposed amendment that is being recommended by planning staff today, or being put forward for consideration, would see an allowance for those boats and recreational vehicles to be parked on the driveway in the front yard for an exemption period of 72 hours per month.
So just for clarification then, if someone has a utility trailer and it's parked to the side of the house, back from the front wall, it's allowable?
That is correct. One utility trailer, that is permitted today.
Okay. So when will this report come back?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's anticipated that staff will be able to meet with residents and the larger community members to discuss the draft bylaw, stemming from tonight's meeting. We will have to do some further analysis, create the reports with various details for your consideration, and it's generally anticipated that that'll be coming back to you in the new year.
So there's nothing that we can do to accommodate this season with a temporary, some kind of a temporary bylaw?
So through you, Madam Chair, I'm understanding no, there's no temporary permissions that are in place at this point in time.
I know there are no temporary positions, but do we as a municipality have a vehicle in which we could, given that we're giving consideration to this, provide something for this season coming up, seeing it's the beginning of June? And there's obviously a request by the community and the public for this kind of consideration. What vehicle do we have that we could consider something?
Is anybody in a position to respond to that, or is that?
Perhaps the city solicitor would have a suggestion?
Through you,
Hi.
Madam Chair, the public process that's being followed now for the current staff proposal would be required regardless. There's requirement for public meeting and all the reports. There's no fast way to bring forward the zoning amendments that would be required to allow this.
So once the staff report comes back, would it require another public meeting?
Not if there are, if what's brought forward is largely what you see before you today, if there's no major changes to it, then no further public meetings would be required.
So this could be the public meeting that is required under the Planning Act, and we could have a pilot in the summer of 2018 to take a look at whether or not this kind of a process could work. I just think, we're dealing with a public meeting at the beginning of June, and we're basically saying to people that we're giving this consideration, but it's going to take us a year for us to write a report.
Thank you.
Anyway, that's just the one thing. The other thing that I would like to say is that the biggest issue that I have had dealing with my constituents is in regards to utility trailers. And a utility trailer is something that a lot of people use on a regular basis. If you don't have a truck, a lot of people would have a utility trailer in order to do the kinds of things that the gentleman had suggested. So I would like to see that be included in the consideration of this as well. There was one other thing. Oh, The last thing I would like to ask when you're looking at the bylaw and giving consideration to vehicles is the size of the property. Some of the homes in our community are not conducive to parking any kind of a recreational vehicle, utility vehicle, what have you. But there are many that, as noted in cases today, that you could park for vehicles, and a lot of them also have good space to the side of the property. So could you please, when you're looking at this bylaw, give consideration to whether or not we could apply something which would give consideration to the
We're really
size of the parking?
straying here. This is, yeah, and I apologize for allowing that to happen, because we'll have this debate when the recommendation report comes forward. But your question of clarification is, could staff give consideration to a bylaw that takes into consideration the size of the property?
Yes, Madam Chair. And really, this public meeting is the first time council has been presented with this as well. So based on my experience, those are some of the considerations I would like to see staff deal with when they deal with the bylaw.
Terrific, thank you. Councillor Palashi, and if we can sort of, tighten things up to questions of clarification, please.
I'm looking for some information, or hoping for some information that will be coming back. I don't have any real direct questions. So it is kind of clarification on what's coming back before us. I'm not trying to turn anything. Just to staff, I was wondering if the report coming back would have a breakdown of how many complaints that we get per year, by month, that relates to this.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe it would be appropriate to provide council with information relating to number of complaints and enforcement matters as it relates to this matter specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additionally, can I, just with respect to the one gentleman that talked about trailer tongues, I've purchased trailers, and those tongues are a little bit, they're not included in the overall size when you do purchase a trailer. So could the bylaw, when it comes back, just mention that, or have some kind of wording in there about the tongue length, or additional?
So through you, Madam Chair, the discussion that we've heard or had tonight and heard from residents on relating to tongue size matters and such for the trailers, yes, staff within our future report will be referencing some discussion on that in particular.
And then finally, just with respect to bylaw and 311, any notifying, if we can notify when the complaints come in to the complainant that there are upcoming changes to the bylaw, and then if we just stress to the officers that they give their right to issue warnings during kind of this period, and not come down with the hammer and such.
Not sure that is something that we can give direction to.
No,
I would
it's just
suggest
they have a right to issue warnings and to look at, and I just want our bylaw officers to know that, these changes are coming, and then also additionally, 311, I'd like to get this information out to the complainants so that they know that the changes are coming when they do call in to complain.
So you're looking for a
Through you.
communication strategy.
Through you, Madam Chair, my advice, this is a land use matter that we're dealing with, a zoning matter, and we're having a statutory public meeting to deal with that. If there's other issues on enforcement in lieu of proposed changes to the zoning bylaw, those could be matters that could be added to Committee of Council possibly on Wednesday, and some discussion at that point in time.
I'll rephrase the question. When a complainant calls in about a matter that is in the upcoming changes, is that complainant notified that the changes are coming?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe so, because a complaint that's filed with the city on any bylaw enforcement matter is dealt with by staff. I don't think necessarily that we take that information, nor do we may have approval of the consent of the individual to then use that information to communicate with them at some point in the future about prospective changes that may be coming to land use in the future. So I don't think we make that connection,
Oh,
nor should we.
Councillor Pelleggi, I am going
I
to suggest
understand.
that might be a question for question period on Wednesday, or our next committee of council meeting.
Sounds good. That was it. Thank you, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. When we distinguish, do we have to place recreational vehicles in the same category as, for example, trailers? Can they not be separately categorized? Because, from what I'm hearing a lot is that some people bring it home for maybe a couple of days, and it's used for mostly family functions or family events, or family recreation rather, and then they take it back to wherever it's stored for the rest of the time. So that's the first question.
So through you, Madam Chair, so the current zoning bylaw does distinguish between different types of trailers. And so the type of trailer that we're speaking through the report tonight is the trailers that accommodate recreational vehicles. As we heard from Ms. Elizabeth Corzola earlier, there is a separate permission for utility trailers. And so based on that premise, I'm curious, Councillor, if you have some additional follow-up question just on that.
No, from what I was reading, I thought that they were lumped together in the same category, so that they're different. The second question is that when somebody makes a complaint, so from what I'm understanding, that it's not actively enforced, or nobody's actually going out looking for these infractions, that it's only in a complaint-based system. If a bylaw officer was to deem that somebody was illegally parking, do they give in terms of the process, do they give a warning, or do they give a certain amount of time, or is it a ticket right away?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, there is actually a notification to the property owner. When a bylaw enforcement officer goes out, they will document what they believe to be the offense. They send it through to the zoning services section. My staff will review it, determine whether it's a contravention, depending on the kind of trailer it is, the location that it's been found in, and then a notification to the homeowner is sent out. A typical compliance period of approximately 3 weeks is given for the owner to remove and find an alternate location for it.
So even if it was 72 hours, they kind of get 3 weeks?
Yes, they do. 3
Okay.
weeks is the standard to comply. Now, there are occasions when that will be extended, given any circumstances that might be relevant to that homeowner, but extensions certainly are granted.
And that was a question of clarification.
It's a question of clarification, doesn't sound too bad, but do you retroactively start timing in any situation, or is it just from when the point of observation that you begin to time how long it's been there?
Through you, Madam Chair. It would be from the date that the zoning services plans examiner is reviewing the complaint and the documentation from property standards. From the date the notification is sent out, we would provide 3 weeks to comply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to receive the delegations? Councillor Bowman, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That was moved by Councillor Bowman. I'll need a motion now to approve the staff report. Moved by Councillor Fratini. All those in favor? That's carried. We'll move now to item 4.2, and I don't believe anybody put their hand up to speak, but I do believe, Mark, you had some correspondence you wanted to submit. Did you wish to see a presentation? So let the record show that no members of the public wish to see a presentation this evening. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation on this evening? No, thank you. Okay, let the record show that the applicant declined the offer to make a presentation this evening. Do I have to ask staff the same question? No? I don't need to ask staff the same question? Okay. So, thank you, Mark. There's a submission of correspondence on this item without a presentation. Thank you. Does that get recorded as correspondence related to the, okay, so do I need a motion to receive that? Someone like to move receipt of the correspondence? Councillor Palashi. All those in favor? That's carried. I now need a motion to approve the recommendation in 4.2 on the statutory public meeting. Can someone like to move approval? Councillor Gibson, all those in favor? That's carried. Item 4.3, we adjourned that one, Mr. Clerk. Item 4.4. So this is a proposal submission by Billy Tung, KLM Planning, followed by a staff presentation by David Vandenberg, Central Area Planner. Is Billy Tung here? Hello, good evening.
Sorry about that.
You have 5 minutes to do your presentation this
Sure.
evening.
Good evening, members of council, members of the public. Thank you for showing up and giving up your precious, late spring, early summer evening to hear this application. I'll be real brief about this presentation. This is a different setup, so typically I would have access to the mouse, so I don't quite. Okay, all right. So I'm in your control, I guess. If you don't mind advancing the slide. Oh, sure, I can have control. Great, thank you. So again, my name is Billy Tung. I'm with KLM Planning Partners. I am the planning consultant representing the owner on this application before you this evening for a zoning bylaw amendment. The owner is NYX Capital Corporation, and the lands are located at 12 Henderson Avenue. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that people in the back can hear me. This is a different arrangement. Okay, all right. So the property is shown in the blue highlight. It's the former gummed factory lands. So currently it's vacant. The current owner took possession of the site. There's been a couple of changeovers in terms of the land ownership since the lands in the past had the demolition and regrading activity. So it's not this current owner. They bought the site late last year from multiple land ownership changes. Again, the area is located in the blue outline. It's part of an area that is bounded by the Orangeville Railway to the south. It's an irregular shaped lot, it's triangular, and then Fletcher's Creek is on its westerly boundary. It currently has frontage along Sherrod Avenue and Henderson Avenue, and where the existing cul-de-sac is located. It's not quite advancing. Here you go. Here's a depiction of the conceptual site plan that was filed accommodating the rezoning application. Mr. Vandenberger would get into the policy framework and the context and what it is that we're proposing to do, but in terms of the actual proposal itself and the nature of it, it is for 172 units in a mix of back-to-back townhouses with integrated garages, which I'll get to in a bit. There are the units that are shown in yellow. And then, that's 172 in total, 106 of which are the back-to-back with integrated garages. 48 of those are regular back-to-back stacked townhouses that will utilize the surface parking that's being proposed along the railway. And then there are 16 traditional street townhouses that are on the westerly boundary that backs onto a proposed stormwater management facility, which backs onto Fletcher's Creek. And there's also 2 semi-detached dwellings in that mix that are shown in the purple on the site plan. Circulation is driveway access from the existing cul-de-sac. Comes down, circulates through the site along the railway, and then up back to Shear Avenue. All the units are approximately 3.5 to 4 stories in height. And just to elaborate in terms of the building stories, it depends on the grading and how the grading can be dealt with. That would have the front elevation along Shear Avenue seem like a 3.5-story building, because the garage, the integrated garage in the back, could be through the detailed site planning that could be lowered a little bit to bring that massing down along Shear Avenue. Just to show you some of what this proposed integrated parking stacked townhouse unit would look like. For those units, each of the units will have its individual garage, but it's integrated into the base of the units. And this is where I mentioned before that could be partially sunken in. There is a garage door that is shared amongst all of the residents. The driveway is integrated into the ground level, and then the garages are off of that driveway. So you'll see that in a floor plan depiction. This is a portion of that block. You'll see that the driveway is shown in shaded in blue. The garages are off of that driveway, and they're integrated. You don't see the garages from the street at all. So it has the appearance of a apartment, a 3-story walk-up apartment building. You would never know that the parking is integrated into the base. And then staircases and internal accesses off of a front access for each of the units. So at the face, it'll look like a rear access a townhouse building, because every unit will have an individual door addressing the street. And then you have your regular stacked townhouse units, again with the sunken level facing either Shear Avenue or the internal muses. And then your street townhouses are 4 stories in height. So that's where the 4-story comes in. So again, back to the site plan, in terms of the distribution of all these units, the units along Shear Avenue will only have the pedestrian access along it. There are no vehicular driveways or garages facing Shear Avenue, so it's a very pedestrian-friendly environment. Internally, between the townhouse blocks are landscape muses. So again, these are where you would have landscaped areas in between the buildings where you have common seating areas. And then in some locations, there are proposed playground areas. They're larger in terms of that triangular shape open space blocks. That would be where some of the playground equipment and a lot more of the passive seating areas would be located. In total, the coverage, just to give you an idea, the building coverage themselves only represent 20% of the site area, and the landscape component, including that stormwater management facility and the restoration works that are associated with that, make up for about 58% of the site. So it's quite a lot of green space and landscape space through this form of development, because a lot of the parking is integrated into the base of the dwelling. That's why a large number of the units are in that building form. And then in terms of the surface parking, that's all along the railway. So it limits the amount of vehicular exposure along the public streets. In terms of the heritage component, given that owners in the past had, the previous owners had demolished the building in the past, through the submission, there has been an environmental site assessment. I know there were some questions at the open house about the former industrial use and is it appropriate for residential uses. Through the application, we've submitted the accompanying environmental site assessments, and I understand from my client that in fact they have done the remediation work on the site in the past year, and have filed for a record of site condition with the province. So to confirm that it is an appropriate site in terms of the contaminants haven't been removed. Through the application, we are proposing to put in a heritage plaque on the site, and working through the detailed site plan design, perhaps even a heritage mural to illustrate the former gum paper factory that used to be on the site, to draw attention to the former heritage building that was there in the past. Yeah, I'm in the home stretch now. In terms of density, the area is subject to a secondary plan that provides for medium and high density residential uses. That ranges from 51 units to 214 units per net hectare. The proposed density of this development, the owner had wanted to design this sympathetic to the residential neighborhood in the area, so that's why they're proposing these low-rise building forms. That density only comes to 55 units per hectare. So it is on that lower end of that spectrum. Again, recognizing that in this area, the owner wanted to put in something that was on that lower end of that spectrum. So I'm available to answer any questions that may come from members of the public and the council.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now I'd like to invite David Vandenberg.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members, and members of the public. My name is David Vandenberg. I am the planner with the city responsible for managing the review of this application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the proposed townhouse development. In my half of the presentation, I will be summarizing the planning policies that apply to the site and describing the next steps for the review of the application. So first, in the official plan, the property is designated central area. The vision for the central area in the official plan is to continue reinforcing its role as a focus area for investment in institutional and region-wide public services, as well as residential, commercial, recreational, cultural, and entertainment uses. It is an area where redevelopment and intensification are generally encouraged. The emphasis on intensification, however, is balanced by policies that also call for protecting existing neighborhoods. And the official plan provides direction on what should be considered when redevelopment is proposed within an established neighborhood. The key in the official plan, that the official plan sets out, is compatibility of the new development with the neighborhood. And as said on the OP, the official plan, compatibility does not mean that the new development must be the same as the surrounding land uses. Instead, it relates to whether the new development can be harmoniously integrated in use, scale, form, and character. A small portion of the site at the northwest corner is also designated as open space. This area is part of the value lands associated with Fletcher's Creek, which is located to the west of this property. No development is being proposed within this area. An amendment to the official plan is not required for the proposed land use. Conformity with the other provisions of the official plan will be evaluated in the future recommendation report. As far as the secondary plan policies, the property is located in the downtown Brampton secondary plan. It is predominantly designated medium-high/high-density residential, with part of the site also being designated as neighborhood park. The typical uses associated with the medium-high/high-density designation are stacked townhouses, walk-up apartments, and apartment towers. The permitted density range is 51 to 241 units per net residential hectare, which converts to approximately 20 to 100 units per net residential acre. The development proposal includes a variety of different townhouse forms consistent with the secondary plan policies and has a proposed density of 80.8 units per net hectare. And the difference between the density that I mentioned here and what Billy Tom mentioned is that this is the net density and the other one is the gross density. The proposed land use and density conform to the secondary plan designation. Part of the western end of the site is designated as a neighborhood park. Generally, this includes the lands associated with the Fletcher's Creek Valley lands. The designation really represents the city's plans at the time that the secondary plan was adopted in 1998, because at this time there's currently no plans for a park, city plans for a park on the site in this location. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required for the proposed land use or density. The conformity with the other provisions of the secondary plan will be evaluated in the future recommendation report. As far as the zoning, the subject lands are partially zoned industrial 1 and partially open space. The M1 zone permits industrial use and really reflects the historical use of the site as a factory, being the gum paper factory. The open space zone permits conservation areas and recreational facilities. The portion of the site zoned open space, again, is associated with the valley lands for Fletcher's Creek. An amendment to the zoning bylaw is required to permit the proposed townhouse use and establish appropriate regulations for matters such as built form and parking. A portion of the site is proposed to remain zoned open space. However, the boundary of this zone is proposed to be adjusted to reflect the limits of the developable area on the site that will be established through the review of this application. Preliminary, a number of issues have been identified with the development proposal that will be reviewed through the processing of the application. These issues include whether the proposal achieves the planning policies and objectives in the official plan and secondary plan applicable to the site, and whether any possible changes to the development that could improve how well it achieves those policies and objectives. How to best integrate the development proposal with the surrounding neighborhood and to create a well laid out development. Some of the matters that be looked at as part of this are the street layout, building placement, architecture, design of the buildings, and configurations, landscape, and parking areas. We'll also be looking at the traffic impacts and whether there are enough parking available on the site. A couple of specific issues are the applicant proposes changes to the extent of the floodplain for Fletcher's Creek. The appropriateness of these changes will need to be evaluated with the Credit Valley Conservation Authority. And they're also proposing a reduction to the standard setback requirement from the adjacent to the south Orangevale Railway Development Corporation railway line. This will need to be evaluated with the Orangevale Railway Development Corporation. And the last issue I note is the potential for incorporating recreational trail connections from the proposed development to the adjacent valley lands. The next steps in the process are that I will continue to process the application and will be considering all comments received from the public tonight and in writing, and the comments from technical experts reviewing the application. At a future time, I will be preparing a recommendation report for the consideration of the Planning and Development Committee and Council. The report will include discussion of any comments or questions that are received from the public. It will also include a full analysis for consistency with the provincial policy statement, conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the regional official plan, as well as all applicable city official plan and secondary plan policies. All members of the public that provide their contact information for this application will be advised when the future recommendation report will be presented to Planning and Development Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a delegation this evening on this application? Anybody wish to come forward? Okay, come on forward if you don't mind signing in. Patricia? And if you could state your name and address for the record when you come to the podium. Maybe the next person would like to sign in while the first one is speaking. Hello and welcome.
Hello, good evening, Madam Chair, Council. My name is Iris Nava. My address is 1 Royce Avenue on the corner of McMurtry and Royce. Our home and building property is part of this, well, not part of the plan, but right around the corner from this area, and that's why I thought I'd come and address you. I did send David Vanderberg an email in respect to our concerns. The number one concern really is parking for the area. We made statement in my email to him that the parking in the area is already quite tight, and on weekends it's very busy with people having visitors, etc. And that our parking lot and our neighbor, Sassy, who is also here in attendance, our parking lots get used by the neighborhood. That's not an issue to us at this point in time because it's, you know, people come and go, they have visitors, there are limitations. But with a complex like this going up into place, the number one concern for us is parking. Now, I did speak with a gentleman from KLM earlier today down in the conservatory and spoke with him in regards to that. And now, compared to the plan that was sent out, it wasn't as clear as it is here today, what was sent out to us with notice. In review of this, the parking, which we were not aware at the time, the layout basically said that the parking was going to be all outside and there wasn't anything individual. The homes that are proposed closer to the wetlands in the purple, as we understand now, they all have a parking garage and they have a driveway. So that allows them 2-car parking, which is for most people more than sufficient, as well as the back-to-back where they have the underground, they all have a parking space and then optionally one outside. I guess the one thing that we did just briefly discuss on the way to here was that I believe it's called a type 2, the red blocks. That may be an option that the builder proposes and looks at, just turning those all into the type 1, where there would be additional parking underneath, and therefore all the spaces along the railroad would be an add-on as well as sufficient for parking. So that's one recommendation that we would like to put forward. As far as the site plan goes. When they were saying, just briefly talking about open park space, I imagine they're talking about the wetland area, correct?
I'll ask the applicant to confirm that.
Sorry, do you want me to address it now or later?
Address it now or later?
I guess it's entirely,
To the
this is a
chair.
kind of a new process, but
So in terms of there was a comment about the park designation that Mr. Vanderberg mentioned. That was really in generally associated with the open space area that's where we have the proposed stormwater management facility. So that just to clarify, that's the area that generally where the secondary plan had originally designated as a park space, but again, the staff has identified that there is no need for that park since that time. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Would have been nice to have.
And Iris, I know you're presenting here this evening, but there is lots of opportunity for that kind of clarification.
No, we just wanted to,
as an ongoing process.
Thank you. Yeah, we just wanted to bring that forward before, money is spent in making all other different types of plans. Just bring that forward for thought process, that they would maybe look at those as options. And that's all I have to say.
Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, if you could state your name and address, please.
Yes, Madam Chair and members. My name is Wanda Isaac, 63 Corby Crescent. I'm hoping that there is a drawing showing the entrance and exits to Queen McMurtry. I think those, if there is, I would really appreciate if that could be placed up, because this is a highly congested, high-density area, 172 units, And when we're looking at families, when we're looking at number of cars, when we're looking at the congestion of traffic in the area, our concern is how we came to 172 units, not 72, not 100, but 172 units in this small area. So is there any way we could get a map?
Staff, are you able to put up 4.4-7 on the screen?
I understand that there was a traffic study, traffic report done, so I would really ask that we have someone, one of the members come up and address that, because it is understandable currently that there is an issue with exiting, turning left on Queen. McMurchie is extremely busy, so we would really like to hear from the members to address the parking and the congestion of people within this area.
I'm going to ask
Thank you.
perhaps Alan Parsons or the planner to respond, but a traffic study will have to be submitted, and all studies and documentation that is submitted with the application is available online at www.brampton.ca for any member of the public to review. But I'll let Mr. Parsons respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As noted, within the staff report that staff has provided through to the committee and members of the public, which is available to everyone if you don't already have it, on page 4.4-15 is a list of all the various supporting documents that were submitted by the applicant in support of the application, which staff have received and which are available to the public. And staff has made those available, and they are available online as well. And if any member of the public needs some assistance in being able to access those documents, Mr. David Vanderberg, who is assigned to the file, can assist with that. And I can advise that in advance of staff reporting back to this committee and council with a recommendation on the application, staff will have completed a technical review of each of these studies, including parking analysis and traffic analysis, which is submitted to the city at this point in time. And really with that, Madam Chair, really, that's essentially a summary of how staff can make the documents available.
And I'd also like to mention that every comment and question that's raised by members of the public will be addressed in the staff report when it comes forward. I see another gentleman sitting there. It looks like somebody else, or I'm sorry.
I'm not a gentleman.
All I could see was the hat.
I'm a skirt person.
If you could state your name and address, please.
But I wear pants. My name is Imelda Petroff. I live at 7 Sheard Avenue. I'm interested in that unit that you are going to put in front of my house. It's going to be taller than mine. It's taller than the building next to me, which is the mental health place. And I'm having quite a lot of fun with that building that you guys said it was okay to build it. I do have lots of people, lots of police and all that stuff. I know it's not this I'm talking about, but you guys agreed to have this house, this place built. Now I have what you call the ladies of the night. I have, how would you say, people who are not afraid to have sexual ideas or doing things right in front of my house. I hope that these people in these buildings that you're assigned to make or do will hide themselves if they're going to have to do anything of that sort. My interest in this place today, I know that everybody here has talked about parking, which we'll be having a hard time to get out of from McMurchie to Queen, what kind of a green space you're going to have, if it's affordable houses. I found out it wasn't going to be. Somebody has to buy the place and that. Then I found out also the height of the building or be higher than my house and maybe a little bit higher than the building next to me. And oh, goodness gracious, they're going to give them a plaque. Well, I don't know about that part. All I want to know is what has happened to the soil that they took out of that place when gum paper was there. And when gum paper was there, they had all kinds of chemical in one part of the building that we know of. Because there's days when you could smell that glue that was in there. You could smell it because with that glue, they would make, what do you call, Christmas wrapping paper, the paper that you would put on your cigarette tip, whatever you smoke. And anyway, and there was other stuff. And I'm telling you, when that glue came out, or whatever that chemical they used for that glue, it was not a perfume day that you wanted to be outside. It could happen during summer, spring, fall, whatever. It had a smell of its own. What I want to know is, what did they do with all the truckloads of land that they took out of there? Did they refill it back with good soil, or the same soil that they had taken out? Can you answer that for me?
I'm not sure staff are in a position to respond to that, but the two of the studies that have been submitted are Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessment. Mr. Parsons?
Yes, Madam Chair. So just to provide a quick response, staff have received some environmental site assessment documents of Phase 1 and Phase 2, which speaks to the history of the site and how the applicant does propose to ensure that the soil on the site will be clean in the future to facilitate the development of the application. We have also received an environmental impact report as well. Within the future recommendation report that we will be bringing forward relating to this application, staff will be responding to the requests for information about the potential toxicity of soils, and if we can provide some response as well as far as what has been done with the soil that was present previously. But staff will be providing a response within our future report.
I hope so, because I can't see how you can put people there and stamp them in like a can of sardine. That's not very nice, or not very, how would you say, proper. These are human beings that are going to be living in there, and not animals. We have a lot of animals going around there now. Thank goodness they're cleaning up the place. But still, it's not right. If they have chemicals that have been there and these people are going to live there, I don't think it's going to be right. I thank you.
Thank you, Imelda.
And I'll see you.
Thank you. Hello, good evening.
Hi. Hi, my name is Simon Premich. I live at 51 Royce Avenue. I'm a resident of Brampton for about 15 years, a resident of Royce Avenue for about 10 years. One of my main concerns with this development is also traffic. Traffic coming up McMurchie already is very heavy. Through rush hour, it's very hard for me to even just to get onto my street, Royce, whether I go via Queen or whether I go via McMurchie. A lot of people coming up McMurchie get frustrated with the light at McMurchie and Queen, turn onto Royce. It's already very heavy traffic, and they take Royce to Haggart and go up Haggart, and they're trying to get all around that neighborhood. It's pushing people through our neighborhood already. I can only imagine with potentially another 350 vehicles causing a lot more frustration. The other issue this leads to is there's a lot of young families on Royce, at least Royce I know of, with young children, and they like to play together. You see them, they cross the street. They're usually pretty good about it, but with a lot of vehicles coming and going, getting frustrated, flying down Royce, this is going to cause problems and safety concerns for our children. Myself, with a young child and a young family starting out, it concerns me a lot, and this is a neighborhood I've settled in. I've put renovations, lots of money into my neighborhood, and I'm part of my community, and I do worry about the others in my neighborhood as well. And I think it's going to be too busy for our neighborhood. That's my main concern. Thanks for hearing me.
Thanks, Simon. Hello, good evening.
My name is Carol Jarvie. I've lived in Brampton for 62 years, and I've lived on Royce Avenue for almost 30. I would like to also voice my concern about, the traffic in the area. I think the fact that so many of us are speaking about it should put it through to council that it is a really busy area. The fact, Mr. Bowman and Mr. Medeiros have been hearing a lot from me lately. I've said I've not spoken or called council in my entire life in Brampton until last month. And we still have the drug dealing racing up and down Royce Avenue. As Simon spoke of the cars racing up and down Royce, known fact, still happening. Also, a number of years ago, they closed the entrance to Memorial Arena on Elliott Street. All that traffic has been rediverted to McMurchie. So you've already dumped that traffic onto McMurchie, and now you're dumping more traffic onto McMurchie. So we can't get out on our own. Also, you've changed Queen Street in the last little while. For me to get to work in the morning, instead of being able to go down Queen Street, I have to take McMurchie to Jesse, to Elliott, to Wellington, to Chapel, to Queen, to get around the mess that's already a congested area on Queen, and now this is gonna be even worse again. The other thing I'd like to bring up is the houses that face the front. We're stating that it'll be a nice pedestrian development. If you look at the same kind of development that's built on number 10, just south of the Walmart Plaza, those houses, that pedestrian area, are a mess. The grass is 1.5 to 2 feet high right now. If you drive up that area, people don't look at the front of their property when they enter from the back or underneath all the time. And a perfect example already exists in Brampton in a number of areas because of this kind of housing. I shouldn't have to call council or call the city to have somebody come and have their grass cut or be forced to cut their grass. But again, go up number 10 and take a look. It's a mess. Brampton looks horrible. I have defended Brampton for a long time, but I'm at the point where I really can't see that anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm Sharon Burton. I live at 68 Royce Avenue, and I've lived on Royce Avenue for 46 years. I'm one of these people, once I've bought a home, I stay there till they carry me out. Anyhow, I've been there for a long time. One of the things that I am concerned about mainly is the traffic. But my main concern is, a few years ago, there was talk of them putting Royce Avenue through to McLaughlin Road. And it was taken off the books. And I am hoping it continues to stay off the books. Because to me, that is the only way that this traffic problem is going to be solved. When they put in 172 units, where is that traffic going to go? Where I live now is faster for me to walk over to my drugstore at McLaughlin and Queen than to get into my car and go, especially from, I'd say, 2:30 on to 6 o'clock, getting out onto McMurchie. And the traffic, because of it being so built up now in the west end of Brampton, the traffic coming along Queen is so busy that what people are doing, they're coming from Queen down to Haggard and then coming up on Royce to get out to McMurchie to try to beat the light. The traffic in that area now is horrendous, and I am surprised that there has not been a child hit by a car, and I would really hate to see that happen. That is my main concern. I mean, it's nice to see new homes going up and have an area looking pretty, but you need to have roadway in order for traffic to move, and I just can't see where that is possible. I really can't. Thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you, Sharon. Are you from the East Coast, Sharon? You from the East Coast?
Pardon?
I said, are you from the East
No, I
Coast?
get asked that all the time, but no.
Oh.
We have a lot of East Coasters on Royce Avenue.
Do we have any other delegations this evening?
Yep.
Hello, good evening. If you could state your name and address, please.
Wolfgang Corrales. And I live at 20 Royce Avenue. And I've been there since time immemorial, when Novice Hockey Week was over at Memorial. I was there when the Times and Conservator was done at Charters Publishing Company. So I've got a good history of this area. And it was a quiet area. It was a nice, quiet area. A lot of people took pride in it. Everybody looked after their houses and so on. And a few years back, we thought that this community was so quiet that we put a petition of over 150 names to stop the supportive housing that was there. It was ignored. I want a quiet community. I pay taxes for a quiet community. This is what people in my neighborhood want, is a quiet community, what we had. If you add that in there, there's going to be helter-skelter. A lot worse helter-skelter than you know about with that supportive housing that is there. You've had your phone calls. So this is my point. I want a quiet community. Adding all that there is I just see trouble. There was a paper that was given to the planning department before the supporting housing went up over there on Sheard, of possibly putting that area for long-term care or senior citizen. And it was given to Bob Callahan. That would be good in that area. Quiet. Not the hullabaloo that's going on. And with the height of the building, one thing that I like on where I live, I see that sun come up and it goes right through my window. When you put those townhouses up, the people on Henderson Shear, they're not going to get any light. No sun whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Do any members of council have questions of clarification only? No straying. Seeing none. Let the record show that no members of council had any questions of clarification. I will now accept a motion to approve the staff report. Councillor Jeff Bowman, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Do I need a motion to receive the delegations as well? Councillor Medeiros, would you like to move receipt of the presentation of the delegations? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move now. Item 7.1 was put into consent because we had no delegations appearing for that this evening. Item 7.2 is a report from Development Planner Nasir Mahmood. It's here for approval. Councillor Gibson, would you like to move that? Yes? Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of 7.2? That's carried. 8.1, 8.2 are in consent. Item 9.1 is the report from C. Jasinski, Heritage Planner, Planning and Development Services. It's a status report only on the Main Street South Heritage Conservation District in Ward 3. Are there any questions on that from members of council, members of committee? Seeing none, Councillor Medeiros, would you like to move receipt of the status report? All those in favor? That's carried. 10.1 is the referred matters list. Are there any questions? Seeing none, would someone like to move it? Councillor Kaleshi, all those in favor? That's carried. And item 13.1 is an item of correspondence that was handed to tonight's agendas. Someone like to move receipt? Councillor Dillon, all those in favor? That's carried. Are there any questions from members of council or members of committee on this? Seeing none, are there any questions from members of the public on a matter on tonight's agenda?
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
Sorry.
Come on forward.
I want to speak again, sorry. My apologies. One of the questions I had or would like to point out is when the city sends out letters of meetings for afternoon meetings, et cetera, many of us do not get them, or we get them the night before the meeting. For those of us who work for a living, I can't take a vacation day at the last minute or call in sick to come to a council meeting. So we would like the notices a little bit more in advance than one night before when they come through the public mail. The other thing is, the people at the top end of Royce Avenue didn't get notices about this because they were told it didn't really affect them, but the traffic truly does affect them. So the notification process for this is not clear. Communication by the city of Brampton is not clear, and it really needs improvement that we can get something. I would like to come to more meetings that affect me, but I don't find out about them in time.
Okay.
So we would just like to propose that communication be better from the city to the constituents so that we can come and actually express our opinion. We do take pride in our neighborhood, but we don't get a chance to speak.
Thank you, Carol. I'm going to ask staff if they can respond to the process for notifications of meetings.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So the city planning staff does send out the notices in conformity with the province's Planning Act, which requires that either a circulation by way of letters, by way of public mail, or by way of circulation in a newspaper, local newspaper occur. And so the planning staff do conform with both of those, not one or the other, but both. There is a requirement in the Planning Act that those notifications occur 20 days in advance of the public meeting. So staff do ensure that we complete all of our administrative tasks and put all those informational pieces through to our Canada Post and through to Brampton Guardian in order to comply with that 20-day requirement. Further, I can add that the Planning Act does require that a circulation distance by way of mail occur from 120 meters from the subject properties limits. And so staff does, as per City of Brampton official plan requirements, or city policy, double that Planning Act requirement so that it is not 120 meters, but 240 meters.
So when you call 311, which is the number I've been, again, never spoke up about City of Brampton until last month, as these two gentlemen will attest. When you call 311, you are told that it's 10 days that you have to put the letter out. So 10 days does not allow enough time. You also should know that not everybody in the City of Brampton gets the Guardian. The Guardian is not delivered to every house. I do not get the Guardian. So I would not be able to get it from that method of communication. Okay, and again, if you call 311, they tell you it's 10 days notice that you have to put the mail out. So perhaps that's a lack of communication within your own staff or people giving out information to the public.
Oh, thank you for bringing that to our attention, because now it's a matter of the public record, and we'll follow up on that. But you should definitely be receiving it more than a day or two before the meeting.
And the people who live at the top end of Royce, up at the top of the cul-de-sac, more than one person spoke tonight from that area because we talk in our neighborhood and we know what's going on. But they were not giving that notice, but it truly does affect them. They're trying to, the people that are trying to get out on McMurchie and trying to get out on Queen. So they really are affected, even though it's not within the required distance that the city gives.
Terrific.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Carol.
much.
Thank you. Sorry? Alan, did you want to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Gibson.
Kind of late now that he left, but I wanted to ask staff on, how do we send the notices out now? Because she said that they got it 1 day in advance. If we had to put it out 20 days, how do we send the notices to their?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, we use a third-party company, Data Communications, that's I think the name of them. What they do is the preparation of the envelopes and the stuffing of the envelopes and the addressing of the envelopes with the information that we provide. And we are really very diligent in ensuring that they have that information so that they can carry out their tasks and then get it to Canada Post for the mailing with sufficient time. And it's all counted backwards from the public meeting date through to the 20-day requirement as per the Planning Act, so that we have satisfaction to know that the turnaround time of Canada Post of perhaps 3 days, 4 days or so for a mailing can be carried out, and the residents can have those items in their mailbox really in conformity with the Planning Act requirements. And then further to the mailing, yes, we follow up with the Brampton Guardian in a similar way, whereby we're following up with and it's myself in particular and our management staff, we're speaking with our administrative staff about the particulars of how we communicate through to these companies. And so in respect to the local newspaper, we ensure that we get in touch with the Brampton Guardian, and all of that occurs with the same amount of time.
I know we're not in a position we can put a motion on the floor because we're now on question period for the public, which is gone. But can we maybe make this a little bit clearer at the beginning? We get this complaint all the time. And maybe at the beginning of the meetings, once we go into this, we need to make it more clear in how we put the notice there, not that we just do, because even with your explanation about it was either or, the provincial planning act says either or, and you said we do both, she still commented about the Brampton Guardian not getting it. So maybe at the beginning, we can make it clear, and we can also make it clear on each application when that notice went out. So in other words, if it's going through Canada Post, everybody should be getting it. When did it get into Canada Post's hands? We should know that. I know, we all know from elections, when we put stuff out, we get a receipt that says, it's in our hands, here's when it went out. We know, and I'm sure we do, the city knows too, when that went out. If we make that clear at the beginning, I think it might help us not take criticism for, because we go far and beyond, we always have gone far and beyond what the Planning Act says. But it seems that people don't get it, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it gets mixed up with other things in their mail, but, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Those 3 words we like to hear most. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Wellens, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone.